What happens when a beloved comedian steps into the lion's den, onto a talk show stage, and exposes the host not with anger or aggression, but with pure, unfiltered truth? Well, buckle up, because what unfolded between Joy Behar and Leanne Morgan on The View was nothing short of legendary. It was tense, uncomfortable, and absolutely brutal in the most polite way possible. The cameras flashed back on after commercial break. Joy Behar sat at the center of the iconic round table, wearing that familiar smug expression, the one that suggested she owned the room, the audience, and every conversation that took place within those studio walls. Her hair was perfectly styled for television, not a single strand out of place, and her perfectly manicured hand shuffled through her note cards like she was preparing for a victory lap. Because in Joy's mind, that's exactly what this interview would be, another effortless display of her sharp wit and superior humor. Today's guest was Leanne Morgan, the wildly successful and rising powerhouse of what Joy considered country comedy. In Joy's mind, Leanne was just another sweet little small-town entertainer, someone she could easily condescend to for laughs. Joy leaned into the camera as the applause faded. "All right, ladies, we're back," she announced, her tone oozing theatrical flair. "And I'm here with Leanne Morgan, who apparently thinks telling jokes about small-town life makes her the next big thing in comedy. Leanne, honey, why don't you tell our viewers what makes your little stories so special?" The condescension dripped from every syllable. The audience reacted subtly, a few side glances, a few uneasy chuckles. Even the co-hosts shifted in their seats, instinctively sensing the tension forming like thunderclouds over the table. Leanne Morgan, calm, poised, dressed in a stylish but humble outfit that screamed authentic instead of manufactured, just smiled politely. But her eyes told a different story. She had already taken the measure of this room. She understood exactly what game Joy was playing. "Well, Joy," Leanne began with her soft, warm Tennessee accent, "I reckon what makes my comedy special is that it comes from a real place. I talk about real life, real struggles, real people. Not everyone needs to put on airs or talk down to folks to get a laugh." Joy blinked. Her smile froze for a beat, just long enough for the cameras to catch the crack. But Joy Behar was not one to lose footing easily. "Oh, please," she scoffed with a dismissive wave of her hand. "We all know real comedy requires intelligence and sophistication. Anyone can tell stories about their hometown and get a few chuckles from people who don't know any better." A risky line. Even the audience inhaled sharply. Leanne stayed perfectly sweet, perfectly controlled, like a southern aunt who just found a polite way to call you a fool. "You know what's funny to me, Joy?" Leanne asked, leaning in just slightly. "I've been watching your show for years, and I keep waiting for you to say something genuinely funny instead of just mean-spirited." The air evaporated into silence. Joy Behar's face flushed crimson. For a woman whose entire career was built on quick comebacks and fearless snark, being caught speechless was the worst possible fate. "Excuse me," Joy tried, her voice jumping half an octave. "I've been doing comedy longer than you've been alive, sweetie. Don't come on my show and lecture me about what's funny." "Oh, honey," Leanne responded, still all sugar and sunshine, "I'm not lecturing. I'm just observing. Where I come from, we were taught that being mean isn't the same as being funny. Maybe that's just small-town values talking." Joy's jaw tightened. She grasped her mug like she might throw it. "Small-town values?" Joy repeated with a smirk. "You mean small-minded thinking. Real comedy challenges people, makes them think. It's not all sunshine and rainbows like your little folksy routine." Leanne's smile remained radiant. "You're absolutely right, Joy," she replied softly. "Real comedy does challenge people. So let me ask you this. When was the last time you told a joke that brought people together instead of tearing them apart? When did you last make someone feel better about themselves instead of worse?" Another silence, a painful, undeniable silence. Whoopi Goldberg, sensing a meltdown of live television proportions, tried to jump in. "Okay, well, this is getting interesting. Let's talk about your tour, Leanne." But Joy wasn't ready to retreat. Ego wouldn't allow it. "Are you seriously trying to school me on comedy?" Joy snapped. "Do you have any idea who you're talking to? I've been on national television longer than you've been telling jokes at church socials, or wherever it is you perform." Leanne chuckled lightly. Church socials, comedy clubs, theaters, you name it, she replied. But here's the thing, Joy. It doesn't matter where you perform or how long you've been doing it, if you've forgotten why you started. Joy scoffed loudly, losing her composure entirely. Oh, spare me the after-school special philosophy. Comedy is about truth, and the truth is that not everyone is cut out for this business. Some people should stick to their little local circuits instead of trying to play with the big girls. And that right there was the moment the audience turned, because the hostility wasn't disguised anymore. Joy wasn't just sparring, she was attacking. The crowd murmured, some booed, some audibly gasped. Leanne lowered her gaze for a second, then looked Joy straight in the eye with calm grace. Well, bless your heart, she whispered, a southern phrase sharp enough to draw blood if used correctly. You're right, comedy is about truth, and the truth I'm seeing right now, somewhere along the way. You stopped being funny, and you've been trying to make up for it by being cruel. A spotlight-still silence fell. Not a cough, not a rustle, nothing. Joy Behar, the queen of daytime clapbacks, had been dethroned with the gentlest swing of a verbal hammer. Whoopi swallowed hard. The producers scrambled behind the glass. And even Joy realized the only path forward was to breathe and move on. Though her expression suggested she had a lot she wanted to say, but no way to say it without proving Leanne's point. As they cut to commercial, Leanne leaned back in her chair, perfectly composed. Joy stared straight ahead, simmering, and every single person watching in studio or at home knew they had just witnessed a rare moment, the mighty being humbled by kindness. Leanne just sat there, calm as a summer evening, her expression soft and unbothered, as if nothing Joy said could ruffle her. It wasn't passivity, it was grace, the kind that lets another person dig their own grave one careless word at a time. Joy kept talking, sharp and smug, but Leanne simply folded her hands on the table and watched her with a steady, unreadable gaze. Big girls, Leanne repeated softly, almost tasting the words as she let them roll off her tongue. Something subtle shifted in her demeanor, not a loss of politeness, but an added weight beneath it, like silk hiding steel. Joy, honey, she said, her voice smooth but firm, let me tell you something about big girls. Big girls don't need to tear other people down to feel important. Big girls lift each other up. Joy scoffed loudly, tossing her hair back as if the idea itself were insulting. Please, this isn't kindergarten, she snapped. This is show business. If you can't handle a little criticism, maybe you should go back to whatever small-town comedy night you crawled out of. Criticism? Leanne echoed, tilting her head slightly, genuinely looking confused. Is that what you call this? Because where I'm from, we call it being ugly for no good reason. The audience reacted instantly. A low murmur, a few gasps, the sound of people straightening in their seats. Even the camera operators leaned in, their lenses pulled tighter, sensing something big was unfolding. Joy's co-hosts exchanged silent, worried glances. They knew Joy loved confrontation, but they also knew she had finally met someone who wasn't going to play by her script. Well, Leanne continued, her voice still calm. Too calm. Since you brought up criticism, let me offer you some. The audience perked up even more. A shift moved through the room like electricity. Your whole career has been built on punching down. Leanne said, her tone gentle but her words sharp enough to cut glass. You make fun of people who can't fight back. You mock folks who don't have the platform to defend themselves, and you call it comedy. Joy's face began to redden. She opened her mouth, but Leanne didn't stop. Real comedy, Joy, real comedy punches up. It takes aim at power, not at people just trying to make their way in the world. How dare you come onto my show and psycho-analyze me? Joy snapped, her voice cracking with anger. You don't know anything about my career or what I've accomplished. Oh, I know plenty, Leanne replied sweetly, the corners of her mouth lifting in a serene smile that somehow made the moment even more devastating. I know you've spent years making jokes at the expense of regular people. I know you think being from New York makes you smarter than everyone else. I know you've built a brand around being the mean girl who never grew up. And honestly, Joy, it's just sad. Sad. Joy sputtered. I'm successful. I have a career. I have influence. What do you have? A few YouTube videos and some county fair gigs. Leanne laughed, and it echoed through the studio, light, genuine, and unexpectedly warm. It was the most authentic sound that had been heard on that stage in years. You know what I have, Joy, she said. I have people who come to my shows and leave feeling better about themselves. I have fans who tell me my comedy helped them through hard times. I have the respect of my peers because I treat people with dignity. Can you say the same?" Silence filled the studio so completely it felt physical. Joy opened and closed her mouth like a fish struggling for air, trying desperately to find a comeback that wouldn't make everything worse. Sunny Hostin jumped in, attempting to shift the mood. "Well, different comedians have different styles," she offered weakly. "Different styles," Leanne interrupted gently. "Is cruelty a style now? Because that's all I've seen from Joy today." She turned back to Joy without raising her voice, without leaning forward, without any theatrics. "Just honesty. She invited me on this show not to have a conversation, but to try to embarrass me. And the saddest part is, she's only embarrassed herself." Joy finally found words, but they shook with barely contained rage. "You think you're so much better than me with your folksy wisdom, and your holier than thou attitude. Let me tell you something, sweetheart. This business will chew you up and spit you out. Nice girls finish last, maybe," Leanne said thoughtfully. "But at least they finish with their souls intact. Tell me, Joy, when you go home at night, are you proud of the person you've become? When you look in the mirror, do you like what you see?" The effect was immediate. Joy flinched, visibly as if struck. Her polished persona cracked straight down the middle. For a brief, startling moment, the audience glimpsed something raw beneath her practiced bravado. Fear, insecurity, bitterness, pain. "I don't have to listen to this," Joy stammered, fumbling with her note cards, her hands shaking. "This is my show, my show, actually." Leanne said softly, "I think it's the audience's show. They're the ones who decide what's worth watching, and right now, they're watching you throw a tantrum because someone finally had the courage to tell you the truth." Joy looked around the table, silently begging her co-hosts for backup. But none came. Whoopi stared down at her hands. Sunny looked at the ceiling. The rest avoided eye contact, as if proximity alone might pull them into the blast radius. Joy's face fell. The realization washed over her slowly, painfully. She was completely alone in this moment. "You don't understand," she whispered. "This is how this business works. You have to be tough. You have to fight for your place." "No, honey," Leanne said, her voice now warm with something like pity. "You don't have to become a monster to succeed. You chose to become one, and the saddest part is, you convinced yourself it was necessary, when really, it was just easier than doing the hard work of being genuinely funny." Joy Behar stared at Leanne Morgan with a mixture of fury and something far more unsettling recognition. For the briefest moment, it was as though she were seeing her own reflection clearly for the first time in years. The bright studio lights illuminated every flicker of emotion crossing her face, the shock, the defensiveness, the fear of being exposed. Joy's breathing became shallow, rapid panic disguised as anger. But vulnerability wasn't an emotion Joy allowed herself to feel for more than a heartbeat. The hint of self-awareness vanished as quickly as it appeared. Her walls slammed back into place. The razor, sharp armor of sarcasm and superiority returned. She couldn't stomach the mirror Leanne was holding up to her, a mirror that reflected bitterness, resentment, and a career built on tearing others apart. So Joy did what she always did when cornered. She attacked. "You know what?" Joy snapped, shoving herself up from her seat. The chair screeched against the polished floor, the sound knife-like in the silent studio. "I've had enough of this sanctimonious garbage." Her finger pointed accusingly at Leanne like a weapon. "You come on here acting like some kind of comedy saint, but you're nothing. You're a nobody from nowhere, trying to lecture me about my career." Gasps rippled through the audience. Phones were already raised, recording because no one wanted to miss what was clearly destined to become viral history. Leanne didn't flinch. She remained seated, hands folded calmly in front of her, posture relaxed. She looked at Joy not with triumph, but with genuine concern which only seemed to enrage Joy further. "Joy," Leanne murmured, voice soft as a warm breeze, "please sit down. We're just having a conversation." "No." Joy's voice cracked like a whip, echoing off the studio walls. "This isn't a conversation. This is an ambush. You came here to make me look bad, and I won't stand for it." In the control room, producers panicked, deciding between cutting to commercial or letting this train derail for the world to see. Whoopi Goldberg exchanged a worried glance with the other co hosts all of whom sat frozen in disbelief. I didn't come with any agenda, Leanne assured her. I just came to talk about comedy. Her next words landed with the softness of a feather and the force of a sledgehammer. But if you feel attacked, maybe you should ask yourself why. Sometimes when we hear the truth, it feels like an attack, because we've been lying to ourselves for so long. Joy's fist slammed onto the table. Stop! Coffee mugs rattled. Audience members jumped. Stop with your folksy psychology and your fake wisdom. You think you're so smart, so insightful. Joy sneered. Well, here's some insight for you. This business is cutthroat. It's survival of the fittest, and the fittest isn't some small town housewife who thinks she can waltz in here and lecture her betters. Whoopi finally tried to intervene, her voice calm but firm. Joy, maybe we should take a breath. Joy spun toward her like a storm turning on the coast. Don't you start to, Whoopi, she shouted. I'm the one with the edge. I'm the one who asks the tough questions. I'm the one who isn't afraid to say what everyone else is thinking. A trembling hush flooded the studio. Leanne tilted her head slightly. That's what you think, she asked, quiet, steady, devastating. Because what I see is someone who mistakes cruelty for courage, someone who confuses being mean with being smart. You don't ask tough questions, Joy. You just ask cruel ones. Joy's face turned a dangerous shade of purple, her voice shaking with rage so intense she could barely form the words. I don't have to take this from some amateur who learned comedy from sitcom reruns. She spat. You want to know what real comedy is? Real comedy is telling the truth even when it hurts. She leaned closer, teeth clenched, and the truth is, you'll never be more than a novelty act, a cute little distraction for people who don't appreciate real talent. This time the silence didn't feel shocked. It felt condemning. Even Joy, chest heaving, eyes wild, seemed to realize she'd stepped somewhere she couldn't easily climb back from. But pride is a terrible commander. And Joy Behar was too far gone to retreat. Leanne rose slowly with grace that contrasted Joy's frantic energy like sunlight against a storm cloud. She looked almost sorrowful as she spoke. You know what, Joy? You are right about one thing. Her voice was soft but rang across the room with undeniable power. Comedy is about truth, even when it hurts. Leanne's eyes shimmered not with anger, but with heartbreak. So here's a truth for you. You're not the victim here. You're not the one being wronged. You're just a bitter woman who has spent so long tearing people down that you've forgotten how to build anything up, including yourself. Joy's mouth fell open, but no sound came out. Leanne lifted a gentle hand. I came here today excited to meet you. I grew up watching you, admiring you, believing you were this strong, funny woman who fought her way through a tough business. But what I see now... She paused, her voice cracking with sincerity. What I see now is someone who let that business twist her into something ugly, and the saddest part is, you don't even see it. For the first time, Joy didn't look angry, she looked scared. How dare you? Joy whispered, the words smaller than she intended, swallowed by the magnitude of what had just been said. Leanne stepped back, eyes soft with empathy. Oh, Joy, she breathed. I didn't dare anything. I just told the truth, and you're the one who said that's what comedy is all about. But there was no fire left in Joy's voice now. No spark, no edge, none of the bravado she normally wore like armor. The words came out thin and fragile, the sound of a woman whose defenses had finally cracked. Leanne didn't raise her voice, didn't gloat, didn't smirk. She simply looked at Joy with a quiet steadiness that felt more powerful than any shout. I dare. Leanne said softly, because someone needs to. Your hosts won't tell you. Your producers won't tell you, and your audience deserves better than what you've become. They keep watching out of habit, Joy, not because you bring them joy. She paused, letting the word linger with deliberate clarity. When was the last time you brought anyone joy? Joy? The repetition hung in the studio like a death sentence. The atmosphere shifted, no longer tense, but heavy, thick, suffocating. Joy's eyes darted around the studio. She looked at the cameras, the audience, the crew, at each of her co-hosts one by one. And for the first time, it seemed she finally saw what everyone else had been seeing for years. A woman who had traded kindness for cruelty, humor for bitterness, humanity for a brittle illusion of power. I've been doing this for 30 years, Joy whispered, as though the number itself might form a shield strong enough to protect her. It didn't. If anything, the words made her sound even more tired, more worn down. "And what do you have to show for it?" Leanne asked gently, not accusing, not mocking. Just asking a question Joy had avoided her entire life. "Really? What do you truly have to show?" She leaned forward slightly, her tone tender but unwavering. "Because from where I'm sitting, all I see is someone who has spent 3 decades becoming a person nobody wants to be around unless they're being paid to." Joy's face crumpled like thin paper. Her mouth trembled. For a moment, it looked like she might break down completely. Tears didn't come, but the threat of them hovered so close it was almost painful to watch. Then, as if grasping for the last weapon she had left, her anger flared again, weak, shaky, but still there. "You think you've won something here," Joy snapped, though her voice was shrill and uneven, more desperation than fury. "You think you've accomplished something by coming on my show and humiliating me? Well, congratulations. You've destroyed someone who was already down. That must make you feel really good about yourself." Leanne shook her head slowly, sadness softening her features. "Actually, Joy, it makes me feel sad, truly, because I can see the person you could have been. I can see glimpses of the comedian who probably started out wanting to make people laugh, not cry. Someone who wanted to bring light into the world instead of tearing people down to hide your own insecurities." Her voice lowered, full of regret. "But you buried that person. You buried her so deep under all this bitterness and cruelty that I don't think even you remember who she was." Joy swayed slightly, like the words themselves had struck her in the chest. The fight, the real fight, left her all at once. Her shoulders slumped. Her hands went limp on the table. Her eyes lost the sharpness they once had. She looked older, smaller, almost fragile. She glanced around the studio one more time, but this time her gaze wasn't pleading or angry. It was searching, lost, almost frightened. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible. I can't do this anymore." And then she stood up. There was no dramatic toss of papers, no exaggerated storming off, no theatrical eggs it meant to reclaim power. Instead, Joy walked away with the defeated shuffle of someone who had finally seen themselves clearly and could not bear the reflection. Her high heels clicked softly against the studio floor, echoing through the silent room until even that sound faded into nothing. The cameras kept rolling, frozen in place. The audience sat in stunned silence, mouths slightly open, eyes wide, trying to comprehend what they had just witnessed. The studio felt hollow, as if someone had sucked all the air out of it. Leanne watched Joy disappear into the wings, genuine sadness flickering across her face. This wasn't triumph. It wasn't satisfaction. It was grief for Joy, for what she had become, for what she had lost long before this moment. Whoopi finally cleared her throat, attempting to salvage whatever was left of the show. "Well, that was certainly something. Leanne, thank you for being here today. Thank you for having me." Leanne replied quietly, but there was no energy left in her voice. I hope Joy finds what she's looking for." The show cut to commercial. Slowly, the audience began murmuring, whispering, processing the emotional earthquake they had just witnessed. They had come expecting light entertainment, banter, jokes, political chatter, and instead they had watched the complete psychological unraveling of a woman who had spent years hiding behind a mask of cynicism and sharp-tongued humor. In the end, it wasn't rage or insults or shouting matches that brought Joy down. It was something far more powerful, far more devastating.